Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Becoming a Bluebird Landlord, presented by the St. Mary's County Library. My name is Kimberly. I work at the Lexington Park Library, and I'm your host for today. If you have any questions or technical issues, you can direct them to me in the chat. And presenting today is Barb Whipkey. She is the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited in Lexington Park and LaPlata, and we are going to be learning all about becoming a Bluebird landlord from her.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I do want to mention also, if you think of questions afterwards, you can also pop into either store. Our team members are trained and they can answer any questions for you, or you can reach out through email, through Facebook Messenger. Reach out to us any way you can, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Or like I said, if you want that personal touch, stop in either store and the team members will work with you and talk you through it. If you have a Bluebird house, you're not sure if, as we go into the whole sizes and that on the houses, grab that Bluebird house and just bring it into the store, and the team members will be happy to work with you on that whole size, making sure it's the right size and everything. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to share my screen here, all about becoming a Bluebird landlord. So the basics, there are 3 species of bluebirds. The left one is the eastern bluebird here. Then there's the western and the mountain. The only one we're going to talk about tonight is the eastern, because that's the only bluebird that we have here in southern Maryland. Bluebirds are secondary cavity nesters. A secondary cavity nester means that that species of bird is not able to excavate a nest. So if they come along a tree that is decaying, they're not able to dig out a hole and create a nest out of it like a woodpecker can. So a bluebird is dependent on abandoned woodpecker holes or the houses that we put out for them. So that's one reason that it's so important that we put out houses for bluebirds specifically. Bluebirds eat mainly insects, but they do also eat a lot of fruit, nuts, and some seeds. If you've been putting out black oil seed because that's what your grandparents fed, and you've noticed that your bluebirds never come to your feeders, that's because bluebirds aren't able to crack shells. So you need to provide foods that they're able to eat. And we'll go into some of those different foods as we go on. So the difference between the male and the female. Here on the left, the bright blue is the male. In most cases, our male songbirds are going to be the bright, prettier birds. That's because the females are usually the ones sitting on the nest, so we want them to be a little more camouflaged. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to differentiate, is that really a bluebird I'm seeing on those females, because they're almost gray looking. So what you're going to watch for is that rusty breast that's kind of rusty and then ends in white down here. And then look for that white eye ring. If you notice, she has a white eye ring. He does not have that white eye ring. So watch for those when you're looking and you're like, is that really a male I'm seeing or female I'm seeing, or is that a male? If you're not quite sure, check out that white eye ring. It will really be noticeable. You'll be able to see it. And then why do bluebirds need our help? Loss of habitat. You know, you look out here and we clear entire parking lots to put businesses in. You know, it used to be when somebody would build a house, they would clear a spot of land enough to put their house in, they would leave trees standing. That's not the way it's done now. Now we clear it out and build a whole subdivision. So as we clear out all those trees, all those abandoned woodpecker holes that were in those dying trees are now gone. So it's become more important that we help the bluebird population by putting those bluebird houses. So when you have a tree that dies, maybe the top breaks out, the tree's dying. If it's possible, and that tree is in a safe location where it's not going to come down on your car, on your house, leave that tree if you can. It's amazing to watch that tree as it dies and develops. You'll see it bring in woodpeckers. You'll see a lot of different animals come in and call that a home. Obviously, you don't want to leave it if it's going to endanger your car, your house, something like that. But, even if you have to call somebody in and top it out part of the way down. But if you're able to leave those stumps, you may even find insects down around the bottom that brings in those pileated, those great big woody woodpeckers, the big ones that everybody wants to see, the 22-inch tall woodpeckers that everybody dreams of having in their yard. As the ants come in around the base of that tree, that will bring in those pileated woodpeckers. You can put a product, bark butter, that you can spread on that tree that will bring a lot of birds to that tree. So that tree can then become a feeder. This particular one I have in my hand has hot pepper. So the squirrels aren't going to come and eat that, but it'll bring in the birds. So you can turn that tree into a feeder as well to help bring more birds into it. So, and then the last reason is competition from non-native species, which we'll go into a little further and in more detail. Anybody that's been working with bluebirds for a while is probably kind of familiar with this. The first one is our starling. As long as your nest box is sized correctly, starlings can't get in there. So that's where I was mentioning, if you're not sure if your nest box is if the hole is the right size. And for a bluebird house, you want a 1.5-inch opening. So this little metal ring is 1.5 inches. If the hole on your bluebird house is a little bit bigger, it's as easy as nailing this piece onto the front of your bluebird house and then popping this ring over it. And now you've just sized it correctly. And those starlings are no longer a problem there. And that's going to protect your bluebird nest from those ones. If it were only as easy with the sparrows, but we can stop those ones pretty easily. It is really important that these non-native species not be allowed to nest in a house. Science has shown that if this young were to have been raised inside of a house, then she is going to want to raise her young inside of a cavity, inside of a house. So we don't want to start this pattern. The more of those that are raised in houses, the more they're going to expect to raise their young in houses. So we want to stop that cycle. A lot of people will think, well, okay, we'll let the sparrows have that house and I'll just buy another house for my bluebirds. But now those sparrows have 4 or 5 babies. Those 4 or 5 now are going to be looking for a bluebird house to use for next season. So you want to stop that cycle. Passive or aggressive measures can be used with these non-native species because they are damaging our native birds. And then the true enemy is the house sparrow. This is what I often refer to as parking lot birds. This is what you see in Lowe's, flying around in Lowe's, in Walmart, wherever. These are your parking lot birds. Oops, I just jumped way ahead here. Let me get back. These are the ones that you see around. Now don't mix, that's the male here on the left. Don't mix him up with our cute little chickadee. He's got that black bib, but that is not our cute little sweet chickadee that we all love so much. That is the male house sparrow. Over here is the female. If they start to build a nest, we're going to tear that nest out. If you're not positive it's a house sparrow nest, I don't want you to tear it out though. Please get us pictures, get a picture of the bird so we can verify that it is a house sparrow. So you're only going to tear it out once we're positive it's a house sparrow, because it is illegal to tear out any nests of our native birds. A bluebird house, chickadees, titmice, Carolina wrens can all nest in a bluebird house. They are native birds, and it's totally cool to let those sweet little dudes nest in your bluebird house. If one of those nest in your bluebird house, then yes, you need to come get another bluebird house. In that case, you do want to let those ones nest. Those are native birds, and we have to protect those as well. Different story with our house sparrows. If you end up with house sparrows in there, or you think you have house sparrows, reach out and we can help you work through that one. So the 3 basic needs for bluebirds: food, shelter, and water. We talk about water. Bluebirds are a member of the thrush family, so they are a true water-loving bird. If your neighbors have bluebirds and you're trying to entice them over to your yard, get a bird bath. They are going to look for the yard that has water, and that's where they're going to want to call home. So definitely keep fresh water in that bird bath if you want them to call your yard home. And then we'll dig into each of those a little more. So food. We talked about we can't put our black oil out and expect the bluebirds to come. We need to look for foods that do not have shells on them. So we're going to look for things like sunflower chips without shells on them. Peanuts. Bluebirds are big lovers of peanuts. So that's going to be peanuts with no shells on those. Mealworms. They love, love, love mealworms. I do caution you not to just fill them full of just mealworms. If you're just putting out mealworms, they can become calcium deficient. If you're feeding bark butter bits or bark butter, anything with our bark butter products in it that has calcium added to it, so you're okay. That's going to give them that calcium boost. So you're okay with that. If you're using any of our foods that say plus, you can just know that that has calcium in it. If you're using our nesting blend, winter blend, there's calcium added to that. So you can just rest easy that they're getting calcium in other ways and you're good with the mealworms. But otherwise, if you're just putting out, bowl after bowl of mealworms for them, talk to us about where you can find calcium to add to it. Look when you're going to the stores, take the time to read the ingredients on the foods you're buying to see if there's calcium in those foods. This particular food that I have in my hand is a bug nut and berry cylinder. So it has those bugs they love. I mentioned they're a big peanut lover, and then it has the berries in there. So that is this one is one that they always tend to love a lot. Again, stay away from foods that have shells on them. They will come to a feeder and share just fine with your other birds. They are not shy at all. In fact, during nesting season, they'll get a little bossy if they want at a feeder. So a lot of people think, oh, bluebirds are so sweet and that. No, they can be a little bossy if they want a food. So don't worry about that. So any kind of feeder, a feeder that has blue on it is going to attract them. If they're like hanging over here and they see you have a feeder with blue, that is going to attract them in a little quicker because they are attracted to their own color. Oh, hey, what's that over there? Just like Oriole feeders, you'll notice often have orange on them. They're attracted to their own colors, so they will pop in. And then we talked about water already, year round. Heated bird baths in the winter. And then the rest of the year, just making sure that you change that, put fresh water. Down in the bottom, that's what we call a water wiggler. That will move the water, keep it fresh so mosquitoes can't lay in there. And then house features. So you want to, we already hit on the hole size. That's very important. Here in Southern Maryland, it goes from freezing to burning hot pretty quickly. Bluebirds nest 3 times a year through the summer. So that same bluebird that nests with you is probably going to nest 3 times. By that last nesting of the year, it's going to be pretty hot in there. So you're going to look for a house that has cross ventilation in there. This one has a little hole across here and across here. So as we learned in middle school science class, heat rises. That cross ventilation is going to give that heat a place to escape. There's drain holes cut in the corner here. So if water were to get in this box, it would let it escape. And then you want a clean out port. So this particular one opens on the side. As I said, they nest 3 times. So as soon as they're done nesting, as soon as those babies fledge, you're going to pop in there and clean that nest box out. And you're going to do that pretty quickly because mom's going to be ready to start building her next nest. She's going to send dad off to raise the young ones, and she's going to get started on the next nest. So you want to clean out. I prefer ones that open at the top. We'll get into it a little more later, but we're going to be asking you once a week to check on your eggs and check on your babies. So with ones that open at the top, you're able to easily do this. If you've got a cell phone, you can just turn the light on your camera, quickly take a picture, and you'll be able to have a picture of your eggs, your babies, whatever, and see that everybody's okay. So ones that open on the top are my preference. So I can get in there and get out. What a fledgling ladder is. Let me see if you'll be able to see this here. This one has little grooves cut in the front here. It's just a little groove cut into the, this is made out of a recycled material, kind of like Trex decking. And it has little grooves cut, so when the babies are ready to leave, it makes it easier for them to grip. And our wood ones are done the same way. So those are just some features that you want to be looking for. We have a wooden one as well. I'm not as big of a fan of the wooden ones because, or this particular one, we do have a wooden one that opens at the top as well. In fact, it's the one in that picture there. This style wooden one, I am not as big of a fan, even though it is has our logo on it. It only opens at the front. So when we're asking you to check on them, it's nearly impossible to do so because if you open this, you're going to disturb the nest. So I really don't recommend these ones. If somebody's setting up a bluebird trail and it's cost prohibitive because they need to buy several, then this is the better option. But we do have, like I said, the one in the picture there that you can see, if you look right here, you'll see it has the little L bracket that you can turn. So you could just open this right up and check from the top. And then down here is my clean out port. All right, so setting your nest box up. So you want it in an open grassy area. You want to set it with the trees behind it facing out into an open area. Every time mom and dad come in, mom and dad both feed the young. Every time they go to leave, they're going to pop their head out the hole, look around to see if there's any predators, and take off. So you want it facing an open area where they have a good view of any hawks or anything, cats, anything like that, that may be sitting around laying and waiting. And then you want to make sure that that house is set about 10 feet of clearance around it so that no squirrels, raccoons, anything can get to it. You're going to mount it on a pole with this long baffle. So I know you've seen this baffles, that kind of slanted baffles. You've seen our shorter squirrel baffles, but you need this long stovepipe baffle because our biggest predators of bluebird houses are raccoons and snakes. And raccoons and snakes can go right around those hat style baffles or the shorter squirrel baffles. So we need this long stove type baffle. It's about probably about 3 feet long. So this is the style baffle we need to put on these to keep those predators out. Never on a tree, never on a fence. I know as we drive along the farms and that, we see bluebird houses all along the fences. Sadly, the majority of those bluebird babies probably never make it to adulthood. Probably once they get to close to fledging and start making noises and that, probably predators come along and pick those off, unfortunately. So it's very important that they be on a baffle with, or on a post with a baffle on that. And then you want them 100 to 150 yards apart. The reason for that distance is a bluebird will not let another bluebird pair nest close to them. Because when they're looking at that yard and saying, okay, I need all of these bugs to feed my young, so no other bluebirds can nest near me. With that said, I have bluebird houses closer than that. I will never get 2 pairs of bluebirds in those houses. But I have chickadees. I'll have a bluebird here, I'll have a chickadee here, and I'll have a titmouse over in that one. But they would never let another bluebird nest there because their primary diet isn't the same. The bluebirds are coming out and getting those insects off the ground. The chickadee's primary diet is caterpillars. And so they know they're not competing for the same food sources. So they're okay with letting them nest and raise their young nearby. But if you're really wanting bluebirds in them, you need that space. If you don't have that space, you can put one in the front yard, one in the side yard. Just get them out of sight of each other and give them different grassy areas. And that should increase your chance of getting them. I have even taken one and put like up toward the end of my driveway and faced it toward a grassy spot of a neighbor's yard. So the nesting process. So this is happening right now. So start watching your yard. Bluebirds are our first nesters of the year. So they are already started looking for nesting spots. So what's going to happen? The male right now is going around visiting houses. I have one of our we have one feeder here, or one house here that has a camera in it. And I have one of those and I keep watching him, and he comes in and checks it out and then he leaves. Then he'll come back and look again. I'm like, come on, bring her to visit. But he will watch it. If somebody else comes near, he'll chase them away. And then when he finally finds 1 or 2 houses that he's watched for a while and decided is a good choice, he will then bring the female to visit the nest. And if he has 2 or 3 picked out, he will take her to visit these houses, just kind of like house hunter. So she'll visit these houses. She'll go in, she'll check them out. When she's in there, she is in there forever. Like she's measuring the room sizes, window sizes, curtains, where she's going to put her furniture, the whole deal. He will be up on top talking to her, looking in the hole, like, would you make up your mind? And then if they have another one to look at, they'll move on, look at the other one. Ultimately, if she'll decide, she makes the decision which house they are going to nest in. A lot of times, once she makes her decision, she will take a piece of pine straw or dry grass and place it in that house. And that's what we call the rent deposit. So we have a few customers who have already received their rent deposit this year. Sometimes it'll be a week or 2 weeks once she puts that deposit in there before she starts building. With that said, sometimes they don't give a deposit. They just all of a sudden realize, oh, it's almost time to lay that egg. I better build the house. So don't get discouraged if you're watching, you're seeing all this happen, but you don't get a deposit. It doesn't mean they haven't chosen your house. But it is really cool when you get that rent deposit and you know it's going to happen. Nest building can take anywhere from a few days to several weeks. She does all of the building. He is just the cheerleader. He sits up somewhere. He'll find a perch nearby where he can watch and look out and make sure she's safe. But he does nothing other than cheer her on, and he truly is guarding to make sure that she's safe. Every once in a while, you'll see him go in and he might pull out a piece and take it out of there. Why that is, I don't know. But you will see him occasionally go in and decide to remove a piece that she has put in there. So it's really cool to see, but she does all of the nest building. Once she has built the nest, you'll know when they're almost ready to lay. The final layer will be a very fine, soft grass. And in our area, their nest is mostly made out of pine straw, which you can see from this picture here. But that final layer will be very fine grass. Then we start getting the calls like, I think they abandoned their nest. I haven't seen them for 3 days. So that's when we tell people they're off on the honeymoon now. They'll be back. So if that happens, you get that delay between the nest building and the egg laying. Don't worry about it. They will be back. All of a sudden, she comes back one day and it'll happen in the morning. She'll go in and lay her egg and then she's gone again. They don't start setting on that nest until they have laid a full clutch. A full clutch is on average 4 to 6 eggs. The most common for the first couple nestings is 5. Once they have laid a full clutch, that's when she starts setting on her eggs. So they are all going to hatch the same day. So you're going to watch, and she's laid an egg. She's Monday, she laid an egg Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, she lays an egg. You'll look on Saturday. So there was 5 eggs on Friday. You look on Saturday afternoon because you're only looking in the afternoon because you don't want to look in the morning because you might disturb her laying. But when you look on Saturday, there's still 5 eggs. So you're going to count Saturday as day 1 of incubation. And you're just going to mark that down somewhere that that's day 1. So you know to expect that in about 12 to 14 days, those babies will hatch. And you're going to keep a little journal somewhere. I'll give you a couple links. Kimberly will send those out to you after the talk. But on one of those, there's a couple pages that you can download to use as your journal if you want. And then you're going to count once they hatch, you're going to start counting. And you're also going to count and know that about the 18th day, they're going to fledge. You will know pretty clearly when they fledge because while mom and dad are feeding, it is like nonstop traffic at that feeder. Dad helps feed and mom and dad are in and out. You're going to notice every time they go in, to feed, they come out with something in their mouth. Every time the babies eat, they poop, and it's in a little mucus membrane sac. Bluebirds are like the cleanest nesters out there. So mom and dad are going to pick up that little mucus membrane sac, and they're going to take it and fly it away from the nest box. And they're taking it completely away from the nest box because they don't want any signs for any predators around that nest box to know that they have babies in there. So you're going to see them flying that little poop sack away from the box. And so all day long, you're going to be watching this for 18 days. And then all of a sudden, you'll look out there and it's just dead silent out there. And you'll know very clearly that they have fledged. And that's when you're going out and clean that nest box to get ready so she can get ready for the next one. And the eggs are going to look like this. They're going to be blue. However, with that said, every once in a while, people will have a bluebird that lays white eggs. If your bluebird lays white eggs, she will always lay white eggs. Her babies will be just as healthy as a bluebird that lays blue eggs. So don't freak out if you're sure that it's a bluebird, but all of a sudden you have white eggs. Don't go ripping them out of there. It's still a bluebird. It's a healthy bluebird. She'll raise healthy young, but she will always lay white eggs. And the jury's still out on it exactly what causes that. So I'm not even going to try to guess just because nobody can quite confirm why that is. But they are going to be just as healthy. Rose up here. There we go. Okay, so this is just a picture of hatching day. So they're going to be pretty ugly there. So on hatching day, because she started incubating them, sitting on them the same day, they should all hatch the same day. Let's say it's 3 days after hatching day, and you still have this one little egg that didn't hatch. This is one of the reasons I need to ask you to check on that box at least once a week. It was 3 days. Everybody else hatched as they should have, but 3 days that egg didn't hatch. I need you to take a plastic spoon and go in there and scoop that little egg out of there and toss it out. Otherwise, that egg is going to lay there, decompose, possibly expose, or possibly explode and expose the babies, the healthy babies, to all that yuck. The only way mom can get that egg out of there is to crack it and again expose the babies, or push it to the side of the box where it's going to bring ants into the box. Mom won't be happy when you check her box. Mom and dad's going to come flying around clacking at you. They're not going to hurt you, but you're actually helping them to do this. This is something the Maryland Bluebird Society asks that you do to help bring the population back up. So same thing as you're checking on them. If a baby were to pass in the nest, we ask that you do the same thing because mom can't get that baby out of the nest. So you're helping her if you can get that deceased baby out of the nest. So remember I said you're going to reach in there with your camera, you're going to snap a picture. When you do that, you're going to see all these little mouths open up at you when you take that picture. All of a sudden one day, and it's going to happen right about here at 10 days, when you take a picture, they're going to be all laying there like they're dead. They're not dead at that point. That's stranger danger, and that's the last day you're going to open the box. They have learned to fear you, and that's what we want. We want them to know to fear humans, so the box is now on lockdown. We're no longer going to look into that box. We're going to assume that they're close enough to make it those last 7 or 8 days on their own, and they'll fledge when they're ready. So by opening it early, now that they know to fear you, there's the chance that you may startle them and they may fledge the box too early. If they do fledge the box too early, you can put them back in all day long. You pop them back in there before you close their door, they're going to be back out. It's, like a kid when they learn to walk, there's no stopping them at that point. You can't go backwards. So once they learn that stranger danger, which is about 10 days old, we're going to stop checking the box at that point. But again, you're going to know when they have fledged. It'll be very apparent. Plus, you're going to have your little checklist and you'll be clued in. Rarely will you ever see them fledge. Bluebirds are so stinking secretive in their fledging. Only once have I ever seen them fledge, and it was only because I had had hip surgery and I was stuck in a chair staring at the box. And truthfully, I thought there was a snake or something getting at the box, so I called my husband out because the bluebirds were acting so crazy. He went out in the front yard and the bluebirds came at him trying to attack him, and we quickly figured out what was going on, that they were trying to get the babies to safety. So that's the only time we've ever seen it. Okay, so after the fledging, I kind of hit on this, but the parents are going to quickly get the babies to safety. So when you're setting up that place where you're going to put your house, you need a tree or shrub somewhere within 30 feet or somewhere that they can quickly get those babies to safety. When those babies first leave the nest, they cannot fly. They can just hop. They've been like cooped up in this little box and they have no clue what those wings are supposed to do. So the parents are going to try to shuffle them along and get them somewhere up in a bush or something for a couple days until they can figure out what they're supposed to do with their wings. So we need that house far enough away that a squirrel, raccoon, snake can't bridge over to it, jump over to it. But yet we also need some kind of shelter nearby that the parents can guide those babies to it once they do get them out. So keep that in mind. That's why I was saying that, like, if you can have some kind of bushes or something back behind it, that's awesome, because they can bring them out the front and then take them, over that way. The parents are going to continue to feed them for the next couple of weeks. You're not going to see them at the feeders for a while. You'll see the dad and the mom coming to the feeders, but you won't see the babies for a while. It gets pretty frustrating. You're like, oh my gosh, did they not make it? But they're coming, getting food, taking it to them. A lot of times, if you've got pine trees, look up in the pine trees. They ultimately, a lot of times, tend to get them up into pine trees because their breasts will be speckled and they blend in really well with pine cones. So they tend to get them up there next to the pine cones where they blend in well. At that point, it becomes dad's job pretty much to take care of the young. And mom starts to focus on building the next nest and taking care of that. 2 or 3 weeks, he will start to bring the young to the feeders. Usually you'll see 1 or 2 to start with. And then ultimately, just like kids develop at their own pace, so do the bluebirds. And so he'll start, with 1 or 2 at the feeders, and then pretty soon more will come. This is another great reason not to stop feeding in the spring and summer. This is the best time to get to see the young, because the parents will bring the young to your feeders and you'll get to see the parents feeding the young at your feeders. And then you will also sometimes see the young go to the house and offer to help feed the second brood of young, which is kind of cool to see. You'll also sometimes see them scolding the young because they want to just hang out on top of the birdhouse, and dad will have to scold the young and chase them away because they're giving away that mom's sitting in that house. So you do sometimes see that tough love where he has to come and chase them away. Get away from here. Leave your mother alone. Okay, so as I mentioned already, nest boxes need to be monitored at least weekly. We're watching for things like those non-native species, those house sparrows, European starlings. We never want to let them in there. You're going to observe, record your observations, because no matter how much you think you're going to remember when they laid that egg, when they hatched, you're not going to, especially if you have multiple boxes. This is just a sample of a survey sheet, where you would record, the date that the nest, but like I said, on the one website that we're going to send you, you'll find some that you can print straight out and will make it even easier for you. At the end of the season, if you'll report back to me, then we can submit these to the Maryland Bluebird Society and we can report our counts. And then we start to see if our numbers do start to drop off. And, we brought the numbers way back from what they were for bluebirds. So if we start to see that we're having problems, we can kind of like really amp up our work before it becomes a problem. One thing real quick, I just noticed that with the blowflies, mites, things like that. One thing you sometimes will see is ants in a box. We have solutions for that. So if you run into things, just keep our number on standby, our email address, and reach out to us. We can help you with all of that stuff. So, once this talk isn't over, this is over. This isn't the end of it. We're here to help you throughout the season. House sparrows and starlings are not protected by law, so you are allowed to destroy those nests, their eggs, or the birds themselves, whatever you need to do. But again, it is majorly important that you don't do anything unless you're absolutely positive the type of bird you're working with on that. Starlings, the easy fix is just make sure you're using the right hole size on your box. This is the difference in a house sparrow. So starling, use the right size hole and you've solved that. House sparrow, they make a really disgusting, nasty nest and their eggs look much different. But again, if you're not sure, reach out, get pictures, send them to us, and let's just make sure what you're dealing with. And then these are those websites that I talked about. But I am going to send them to Kimberly and she'll send them out through email. So if you had signed up for that, you'll get it that way. If you were shared the link, I'm okay. If you want to snap a picture of that too, that's fine. So with that said, I'm ready for any questions, Kimberly.
A few questions were sent to me. Does the cycle of nesting in the houses, does that apply to all birds where if they nest in a certain bluebird house, they'll always come back? Or is it just that one bird, the starlings?
No. So those birds are by nature not cavity dwellers or not cavity nesters. So that tends to be a learned behavior. So once they do nest in, once they're raised in a nest box, then they learn that, oh, I guess this is how I'm supposed to raise my young. So our other ones that, like I had mentioned, the chickadee, the titmice, Carolina wrens, those ones are all by nature are cavity nesters. So ones like our goldfinches, house finches, those birds are open nesters, mockingbirds, cardinals, meaning that they build what we think of as a traditional, nest that's in a tree or a bush.
Okay. Are all birds attracted to their own colors on feeders or just bluebirds?
A lot of birds are. I don't know that I know the answer for sure whether all birds are, though.
Okay. How far do you need to get the unhatched egg or deceased baby from the houses? Do you have to put it in like a plastic bag or what do you do with it?
I would take it and toss it out in the woods so that it can be a meal for another wildlife and something else out there, but definitely get it away from the nest box. And actually, I'm glad you asked that because I forgot to say something. Every time you go out to check that nest box, I need you to go out, check the nest box, and then I need you to keep walking and make a different path back to the house. Otherwise, if you come back and you go to the nest box and then you turn back to the house, you are giving that predator a scent trail. And so that predator is going to know that that scent ends right there at that post. So if that makes sense, you're going to go, you're going to check the nest box, and then you're going to keep walking past it and leave a false scent trail, somewhere, wander somewhere and then on back to the house. So for
Okay.
the same reason, we're going to throw that egg, that baby, out into the woods, out somewhere away from the nest box.
Speaking of predators, how do you get a snake that's been stuck in a house? How do you get it out? It was in there for a few days.
So if it got in there, you're going to have to just wait for it. The reason it stays in there, it has eaten something and it's waiting for it to digest. So
Oh,
now that it has been in that house and eaten it, you need to relocate that house. You need to put it on the house is okay to reuse, but you need to put that house on a pole with a baffle and move it to a new location. The birds won't associate that house with bad things, but they will associate that location with bad things. So you can take that house, you can put it on this pole, and now we can move it over here, and it's still okay to use that house.
okay.
Birds don't have a sense of smell.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
Vultures do, which is why
Okay.
they're on road cleanup crew.
So, speaking of predators, how do you avoid disturbance and avoidance of hawks predation?
So hawks are just a natural part of nature.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of need to change your thinking on that. When you have hawks, they are getting your weaker, your older, your sicker birds, and they are keeping your bird feeding station healthier. If you kept the same birds all the time and you just kept building a population and getting bigger and bigger, you would end up with finches with eye disease, with older, sicker birds. So they are tending to pick off those weaker, sicker birds and keeping your feeding station healthy. Now, with that said, if you get a hawk that, it's been several weeks and he's just there hour after hour picking off birds, you may in that case either want to cage your feeders for a while or even take them down for 4 or 5 days to force him to move on. But for the most part, it actually is a sign of you have created top to bottom feeding and you've actually created a great habitat in your backyard.
Mm-hmm. What's a good size bird bath for bluebirds?
Uh, any size is good. If the bird bath is really deep, though, you'll want to add some stones in it so you have some shallow spaces so they can get in there and bathe too. It's very important for birds not only to drink, but they need to bathe to be able to keep their feathers healthy, especially during those winter months. If you've noticed during the winter months, all of our birds look fat. That's because they're fluffing up those feathers to form pockets of insulation to keep warm, kind of like our down coats help keep us warm. Same type of thing going on. So if it's a deep bird bath, Make sure you have put rocks or stones in there so you have some shallow areas.
Okay. And you talked about monitoring your bluebird houses. Is there a checklist to help remember all the things you have to monitor every week and then to stop at the fledgling time?
So that the second link that's on there has a couple different types of checklists. So you can choose whichever one you prefer to use. And I think that you'll find one there that no matter, which type you prefer using, you can look at either one of them and see which one you like. But there's a couple different checklists there that you can use.
At the National Bluebird
Yeah, it's the
Society?
national one, not the Maryland one, but the
The national.
national one has two different ones on there. And of course, you can always reach out for help if you were like, I know there was one other thing I was supposed to be looking for. You can email us, stop in the store, call us, whatever.
Okay. I believe that is all. Did you want to talk about the Bluebird Society?
The one of those links is the Maryland Bluebird Society. It's a great resource. There, I think we have some pamphlets still in the store. Let me see here real quick. There's a few still here, but there actually you can download the pamphlet from the website too. I want to say it's like $5 a year or something to join. It's a small amount to join. It's not much at all, but it's a great resource. But you can also just wander the website and find stuff. Both of those websites are really good, though, just for more information. And like I said, if you run into anything or you just can't remember, or you're going to run into unique situations, like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of ants under my feeder. And believe it or not, if you call me and tell me you have ants under your feet, or I'm sorry, under your nest, I'm going to tell you, get a spatula, slide it under, pick up your nest, sprinkle cinnamon under your nest, and in 24 hours, the ants will be gone. So, I mean, it's those silly little things you're going to run into. But being a bluebird landlord is really cool, but it is entailed. There's things that you do need to do. It's not as, where like a chickadee or Carolina wren, you can just hang a little bluebird house or a little house in a tree and that's it. But it's rewarding because of the fact that the bluebirds do rely on us a little more. They can't just excavate a nest, or, the Carolina wrens will just find your propane tank or your grill or your umbrella or a coat hanging outside and pop it in the pocket. The bluebirds really need us a little more.
Well, thank you all for coming. I just wanted to mention next month's program is going to be all about hummingbirds. It will be again on a Thursday. It's going to be April 3rd for next month, and Miss Christine will be hosting it. Thank you very much, Barb, and we will see you in April.